Good afternoon and welcome to another Texas Baptist Annual Meeting Online Workshop. Thank you for joining us. Since we're not able to gather in person this fall, we are bringing virtual workshops to you each week between now and November 16th, 17th, which are the dates of our Texas Baptist Annual Meeting Business and Celebration Sessions. Our final workshop will premiere on Tuesday, November the 17th. Please tune in each Tuesday at 2 p.m. for valuable insights from ministry leaders who are here to help you and your congregation. You can learn more about this and other workshops, as well as sign up for annual meeting updates at txb.org/am. Again, that's txb.org/am. My name is Colleen Wall, and I serve as the Director of Conference and Event Planning here at Texas Baptist. I will serve as a moderator for today's workshop. Joining me for our workshop is Tom Howe, the Associate Director for the Missions Team, Director of Church Starting for Texas Baptist. Becky Beiser is the Director of Leadership Development with Tarrant Baptist Association, and Randy Adams, the Executive Director Treasurer for the Northwest Baptist Convention. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Please note that participants all will be muted throughout the presentation. For technical assistance only, text 214-773-8433. Again, for technical assistance only, text 214-773-8433, and we'll try our very best to assist you. This workshop is being recorded and will be available on the annual meeting website, again at txb.org/am. At the conclusion of the teaching portion of the workshop, we invite you to join us for a brief Q&A with our presenters, Tom Howe, Becky Beiser, and Randy Adams. Welcome, Tom, Becky, and Randy.
Glad to be here.
You can type your questions during the teaching portion by using the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Questions will only be seen by the host. As time allows, the presenters will address as many questions as possible. So let's get started.
Thank you all for joining us for our breakout session on missional partnerships. I've got two great guests with me here today. I have Becky Beiser, who works for the Tarrant Baptist Association, and I have Randy Adams, who works with the Northwest Baptist Convention. I'll introduce those again in just a moment, but we're going to start with the word of prayer. Would you join us? Our Father in heaven, we thank you for the men and the women that you bring to us in our lives and what they mean for us. I thank you for those who are watching, for those of us who are participating, for the opportunities you've given to us to work collaboratively together in missions. That's with each other and with many others. And we're just so excited about when we get to heaven to see all those that are there because of that collaboration. I pray, Father, you'll bless this day and the days to come. We pray in Christ's name. Amen. Well, as I said, we've got Becky Beiser with us and Randy Adams. Becky works for the Tarrant Baptist Association. I'm going to start with you first, Becky, and we're going to just kind of talk about what that missional partnership looks like with us, and some of it spills over into the Northwest where Randy is, and then I'll kind of go back to Randy as well. So, Becky, we've done several things together, Texas Baptist and the Tarrant Baptist Association, and with it being an association like we have across the state, let's just kind of explore some of the thoughts of what our missional cooperation looks like. The first thing that kind of comes to mind is how we've worked together with leadership development. Mm-hmm. So why don't you share with our audience what Tarrant Baptist has done in leadership development and how much that connects with the Texas Baptist?
Right. Well, it is a privilege to be here, so thank you so much for allowing me to be here with you. And leadership development is my heartbeat. And you know, our churches can only thrive as much as our leaders are thriving. And so anything we can do to help leaders thrive and be all they're supposed to be for the Lord is what we want. And so partnering with Texas Baptist has been just a wonderful thing and has allowed us to for God to entrust others in other parts of the country. So what we do in leadership development, one of our major thrust is a thing called Refocus. And so Refocus is a 2-year journey that we do with leaders. And it encompasses 4 retreats and then monthly peer group meetings. And so we've done those locally in Tarrant Association at our retreat center for about 17 years now. But then we partner with Texas Baptist for probably the last 12 years. So we were in Venezuela when there was a partnership with Texas Baptist. You really connected us in Venezuela, and we were able to take our refocus journey there, and probably had 200 pastors go through the refocus journey before we were shut out of their country. But they tell us that it changed everything, and they were partnering together. There was no competition any longer, that the pastors really felt they had grown and grown together. And so I don't know if you want me to share a little bit what that refocus journey is.
Sure, let's talk about that. And then one of the partnerships we've done, and you and I have gone together, is to work in a partnership with this leadership development with the British Columbia Baptist as well. So kind of fuse all that together.
Right. And so we are working with the British Columbians in Vancouver. They actually come across the border, so we don't have to go across the border. We're in Washington State, so not too far from you, Randy. And we have been there. We're on our third group of pastors. So our first group was 2 years. Our second group was another 2 years. That's 4. So we're in our 5th year working there with a lot of them are church starters and other just pastors that have been pastors there in Vancouver. Our group right now is a group of 10 pastors. And we'll actually be meeting next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday by Zoom, doing a Zoom retreat, our first retreat. But we're in retreat 2. But our first retreat with pastors is all reconnecting. And it's helping them reconnect with the Lord, maybe in different ways that they haven't connected in a while. What we have found is a lot of pastors, you get in a routine. Sunday's coming, there's another Sunday coming, and we start doing things in our own strength. And we're always studying for another sermon, but really hearing from the Lord and walking in His power and strength is sometimes missing. And so we take pastors away for a retreat. We do a lot of intentional things with them to really help them connect with the Father in new ways, to hear Him. We do a lot of the disciplines, spiritual disciplines. It's all experiential type learning that we do with pastors. And then they come away with one thing from that retreat. We really want them to come away with a transformational goal that will bring them closer to the Lord and help them walk with the Lord. Plus, they reconnect with other pastors. And so they have accountability partners, and then they meet monthly, holding each other accountable. So that's that first retreat. Then the second retreat, we send assessments to pastors. So we use the DISC assessment, Strength Finder. We use the APEST assessment. And they take all of those before we come. And so I compile a lot of information on each leader. And then we come and we help them learn about themselves, how they communicate, how they lead, looking at how God has wired them and how He's made them unique for His kingdom. And instead of living into a role, living into the call and their design of how God designed them. So every pastor walks away with their own personal mission. And it's really pretty fabulous when I can just hear one pastor right now. It's like, oh my goodness, Becky, I was even thinking things were so hard. I was looking at maybe leaving my church, but now I know why God created me and I know why I'm here. And I cannot not do this. And so it was just a new epiphany from that pastor of really God's call on his life. It's to pastor that church, but it's more than that. And it's how he brings God's kingdom there. So that's the second retreat.
And let me segue with that, coming over to Randy, because that call that those pastors have in their life, it reminds me of the call that church planters will have in their lives, which leads me to our partnership that we have with the Northwest Convention. Randy is executive director and treasurer there, and we talked about a partnership a couple of years ago, and we've developed that partnership. And one of the aspects is in the area of church planting. And so I'm going to kind of throw to you, Randy, kind of addressing some things she did. But as you think about the church starters that have come to the convention there in the Northwest that we get to join with and that we're a partner with you, and some that we aren't, and different ways that we're supporting what you've got going on. A lot of those guys are from the Northwest. but you also have some coming from outside of that region. Talk about what the partnership means to you in terms of church starting.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. I was excited just to hear what Becky had to say, because I think she's so right that healthy churches and a healthy Great Commission work requires healthy pastors and healthy leaders. And one of the phrases you used, Becky, was the ability to hear from God and not just rely upon past experience. And I think that's so very, very important. Church planting is a very difficult work, as we all know, no matter where you do it. In the Northwest, particularly so, in that we're reaching often people who have very little church background. There's hostility toward the church and toward Christianity. I often tell people the difference between pastoring in Texas and Oklahoma, where I served in both of those places over the years, and the Northwest, is it doesn't help your business to go to church in the Northwest. And politicians don't come to our churches seeking votes. They ignore us for the most part. But now there's something very refreshing about that, in that, for example, during this time of COVID, our people are a very committed people. And one thing we've learned is that our folks who come to church and are involved in our work are biblical stewards, not religious consumers. So our giving is actually ahead of last year at this time, both in our churches and through the cooperative program, which is pretty remarkable. When it concerns church plants, we do have guys, we have quite a few from Texas, actually. I always tell Texans that they often do well in the Northwest because Texans are Westerners. We're Westerners. Texans don't look east, they look west. And the Northwest is about as far west as you go. And so Texans tend to do very well here. And the support that we have from Texas Baptist is greatly, greatly appreciated. We have about 500 churches total in the Northwest. That's 2.5 states, Oregon, Washington, and North Idaho. About 12 million people in that region, about 500 churches. Our median church is 50. So half of our churches are 50 and below. About a third of our churches are 30 and below. Lots of little churches. And, some of those churches have never been large churches. They are what they are. And it's not so different, however, from Texas or other places. Most churches never have 100 people. And so Texas is part of the Bible Belt because you have, thousands of churches in Texas. I tell people that the Bible Belt isn't what it is because they have better churches or better pastors. It's because they have a lot more of them. We've got some great leaders in the Northwest, some great church planters and great pastors, some of whom came from Texas. We just need more of them. We need more churches, more pastors, in order to reach more people. And from my perspective, reaching people is, in some sense, a numbers game. Those who have the most churches reach the most people. Those who have the most pastors have the most churches. And so we're in this continual effort to find and seek out men called of God to pastor from the Northwest, or bring some in from outside the Northwest. Texas Baptists have helped us do that, both in promoting the work that we have in the Northwest, sending us some great church planters, and also helping fund some of those church planters. So anyway.
Well, let me follow up on that one, Randy. We'll stick with you for just a moment. So one of the ways you just said that we can continue helping in our partnership is by sending pastors there to start churches, and we're all for that. But not all of us can do that. And a couple of things that we have done the last couple of years is that we've been able to send mission teams or vision trips to come and help identify pastors in need of help that Texas churches could support, and we've got some of that going on. COVID obviously has affected everything this year, and so we've not been able to do those vision tours like we anticipated. We had them scheduled. We put hold on those. We'd like to get those going as soon as we can. I know you're welcome them. So let's just kind of think about, let's just assume that we get COVID in a situation where we can handle it. What are some things that assuming we can come to the Northwest, you are now currently in Vancouver, Washington, which is right across the river from Portland, Oregon. And of course, that represents those two states plus part of Idaho. What could we do in those partnerships in terms of connecting with churches in need in your area? And I'll say this and then I'll let you answer. It was challenging enough before COVID and before a lot of the protests and things have come up. When I heard people, it was a challenge for them to go Northwest. Now there's even a little bit more of hesitation. So how can we help you in the middle of all of this going on?
Sure. Well, let me say in the first year of the partnership, dozens of Texas Baptist pastors were here. I can't remember, but I think I counted over 70 just in the first maybe 6 or 8 months. So the response from Texas Baptist was incredible. It was awesome. It's the best we've ever seen in the Northwest from any partnership we've ever had historically. So that was great. You're right, COVID has slowed things down. Remarkably, however, it really hasn't slowed our churches down so much. I mentioned that our giving is above last year's giving through the cooperative program. Most every pastor I talk to just marvels at the commitment level of their people. I just talked to a pastor today who was describing that. My church that I'm a member of, yesterday there was a profession of faith. We baptized 8 last night in our church. It's a church plant, by the way. It's actually a church plant that Texas Baptists are helping to support. It's Go Church in my hometown of Ridgefield, Washington. But so COVID really, it's made everything difficult. There's a sadness, the racial issues and the demonstrations and the riots that we've seen in Seattle and Portland in particular. Even I was north of Seattle yesterday, and there was a march that came past where we were having lunch, and we didn't know what was going to happen. It was a peaceful thing, but everybody's dealing with this. There is a heaviness, there is a sadness, but there's also the recognition that if nothing has happened to teach people in our area of the country or anywhere that you cannot find certainty, you cannot find hope in building a career or a business or anything really, if you cannot find hope outside of Jesus Christ. I think we know that some have come to our churches even via through COVID, either online or in person now, because many of our churches, most are gathering in person. A pastor I talked to this morning said, I had guests Sunday. The church that I was in yesterday, they had guests that Sunday. They connected via the internet to what was going on when the church was shut down. And what I think we're seeing is that people have learned you can build your life on all kinds of things, but all of those things are totally uncertain, except for the hope that we have in Christ. Hope in relationships, hope in business, hope in jobs, all of those things COVID has taught us, and the riots have taught us. I mean, we've had people lose their businesses because of the riots in downtown Portland and in Seattle. It's taught us that all of this stuff is temporal at best, and only in Christ is there hope eternal. So we've actually seen some really cool things. We've actually had a couple of churches launch even during this time of COVID. I talked to a church planter Friday who actually also, he's in the Seattle area. He is the church planter closest to where Chalk was, that Chaz autonomous zone or whatever it was. He's closest to that. He's a church planter that's supported by Texas Baptist, and he just launched his church in September. And I asked him how it was going, and he said, it's pretty amazing that our finances have stayed strong. We're doing well. We're still reaching some people. He said, I've had a couple of families move away in the midst of COVID and all of that, but we've reached some new people. And here's the deal. This guy went down there in the middle of Chalk, talking to people, sharing Christ with people, trying to get this church launched, and he is getting it launched. And all that's been happening with the help and support of Texas Baptist, though you haven't been able to send any mission teams there during COVID. But he's still there, and he's still at work, and he's still seeing God do things. So we thank Texas Baptist for that. And when COVID's over, you'll have an opportunity to send more mission teams, help him and help other church planters, and some of our established churches, perhaps even, especially with some of the pastoral training that Becky mentioned, and maybe some other things as well.
Right.
Yeah, we have needs in the Northwest, and we always will. I will say this, however, we are a mission people ourselves. So the Northwest, we have a mission partnership in East Asia, and we have had hundreds and hundreds of people in East Asia over the last few years. We've helped conduct large retreats in East Asia. We have sent as many as 163 people to conduct retreats for our East Asian missionaries. So one thing about the Northwest that Texas Baptist maybe could even participate in or learn from is that we're a mission field, but we're also ascending people. We have a lot of our folks that serve with the IMB, dozens of missionaries with the IMB from the Northwest. So that's part of the unique nature of serving on a mission field. One thing I would say too about fear coming here because of riots or protests or whatever it might be, I would say, I've been in a lot of Islamic countries in a lot of places, and I don't have a whole lot of fear. But I would say this: this is the mission field.
Right.
These are the people. Our country has gone where it has because people don't know Jesus. And so this is the place we need people to come. The people that you see causing some of the trouble are the people that need Christ. And so fear shouldn't keep us from them. Fear should compel us to go to them. And thank God our churches are doing that here in the Northwest, and we invite others to come and help us do that.
Well said, Randy, especially in the last part. And I have thought about what we can do to use the Northwest to springboard into East Asia and other places as well. I want to now turn back to Becky because he said something that I know that the Tarrant Baptist Association is doing in the partnership that we have. Different situation in Fort Worth than what's going on in Portland and what's going on in Seattle, but there are a lot of human needs there. So talk about how the Tarrant Baptist Association and its churches and what the partnership we have, how we're meeting those needs and some community impact stuff that you guys have been doing.
So there's several different facets, but one of the things that Texas Baptist started helping, actually pretty much initiated, gave us a kind of seed money to get it started. We found out that Tarrant County had the highest infant mortality rate of any county in the state of Texas and well above the national average. So 28,000 plus babies are born every year in Tarrant County. And out of those that are born healthy and leave the hospital, we had more dying before their first year of birth, before they reached age 1. And so we thought, we don't want to be number 1 with the most deaths, and trying to find out what was causing that. So Texas Baptist with the Hunger Relief Fund actually came and said, Becky, we've got some seed money that will help you buy portable cribs. So we purchased pack and plays. And it was actually a God thing. God just kind of worked out some different things. It's kind of long stories, but it's just the Lord waking me up at 3 a.m. and some connections and just talking and working with Cook Children's Hospital, Dr. Diane Daly there with the Center for Prevention of Maltreatment of Children, and working with the city of Fort Worth, working with the city of Arlington, and just kind of finding out those numbers and discovering that there were 2 issues that were causing the deaths. And those 2 issues were a lot of parents and caregivers didn't have a safe place for the baby to sleep. So many were sleeping in the same bed with the mom. And the other issue was the education to know what was safe. And, when my kids were little, you were to put them on their tummy. Well, you no longer do that. They go on their back without any blankets, without any bumper pads, without anything within the crib, except a tight sheet and a very firm mattress. And so learning all that and educating our population, but working with Texas Baptist, having the seed money, and it hasn't just been one time, it's been 3 times for 3 years. So far, with Texas Baptist's help in Tarrant County, we have purchased over 1,400 pack and plays, and we're working with 38 different agencies. So we started out, we weren't sure what that was going to look like. We were working with Mission Arlington, working with Cornerstone Assistance Network, and a nonprofit called Six Stones, which were all church-based, came out of our churches, and they had warehouses. But then after kind of letting our churches know, a lot of our believers, you know, God has strategically placed all of us to be his light in every domain. They were calling me, you know, Becky, I work for UNT Health Science Center, and we do a Healthy Start program, and I have moms that need a crib, and then Cook Children's and CPS, and then we started working with the police department in Fort Worth and Arlington, the fire department in Fort Worth and Arlington, working with World Relief, Catholic Charities. Anyway, 38 different organizations we send pack and plays to, and they educate families. And so our numbers are going down. We're no longer number one, but that's a partnership with Texas Baptist that has just changed the playing field for infants to keep them safe in Tarrant County.
And I've been aware of that and been a part of that myself. And so as I think about that, one question and follow-up that I have to that is this. Have any churches been involved in this ministry and been able to connect to the different agencies, the churches themselves?
Yeah, so we even have, there's 3 or 4 churches themselves that actually have pack and plays, and they give out in the community themselves. And then we have churches and church groups and Sunday school classes that are all collecting money, and they send to purchase more pack and plays. And then we have churches that are going to the neighborhood school that's next door, and they are actually training parents on how to put their babies safely, so working within the school. So we've had a lot of our church leaders go through training themselves so they can do the same training that we use at Cook Children's Hospital and Texas Health Resources and Baylor Scott and White. We're all working together, and we all have the same training material.
I've been in churches in Tarrant County, and I've also been in churches in Northwest, and they both have that community impact mentality of we can't just wait for the churches to, wait for the community to show up at our church. What do we got to do to go get out and be a part of that? So in our partnerships, a couple of things. Number one, as Texas Baptist, we can participate in the going out in those communities by our giving, by our going. But we can also, secondly, emulate that in the communities that we have where we are even now. We've got about 10 minutes, so I've got one more question for each of you, kind of one question. You both get to kind of volley it back and forth a little bit, and that is, we're in different times, it's a strange world, strange year, everybody talks about those sorts of things, but I want to be optimistic. I want to be hope-filled. I want to be excited about what God is doing and what he will do. So in just a few minutes, each of you, I'll start again with you, Randy, and come back to Becky, is Randy, what would you like to continue to see develop from the partnerships? We haven't touched everything that we're doing together by any means, but what would you like to see as we move forward?
Partnerships really flow along the lines of relationships. And for example, Tom, your brother Tim serves with us. And so that was a relational connection that really helped this partnership flourish from the very beginning. A friendship between me and David Hardage also was a part of that. I think those relational connections between Texas pastors and Northwest pastors is huge. And so as you continue to bring mission teams up here, the vision teams and whatnot, that really makes that's irreplaceable essentially. As those guys get to be on the ground with our pastors, with our church planters, helping them go into the communities, as you said, learn some of the unique dynamics of those communities. I think that is probably the number one thing. In the Northwest, not every town is the same. We have some towns that are more like Texas than they are like Seattle for certain. We have a few places that are quite churched, and they're fairly traditional and fairly Christian in their thinking. And then we have others that very much aren't. The other thing is we have a lot of language groups. We have probably 27 different languages. I'm going to be Friday night in a conference in a Ukrainian church that worships in Ukrainian. uniquely, most of our Ukrainian people worship in Russian-speaking churches, so they can reach all of the former Soviet Union. This church has chosen to only focus on Ukrainian people, for example, and so they worship in Ukrainian. We've got lots of examples of that. Your brother, Tim, helped us establish our first Mongolian language church. But we've got a lot of Korean, Spanish, Russian, Vietnamese, Japanese, Mandarin Chinese. We have one Cantonese Chinese, a lot of different language groups. You may have some churches in Texas, in fact you do, that speak and would connect well with some of these language groups as well. Some of your language churches, maybe that you want to get involved in missions. We may help them get involved in missions in some of those same language groups here in the Northwest. But I think it all comes back to these personal relationships. That's the number one biggest thing.
All right. And Becky, same question to you really is, how can we optimistically look forward to partnering with an association like Tarrant, and that represents the other associations across Texas and churches as well?
Well, Texas Baptist y'all have always been great. And so I've always had relationships. And you're right, Randy, it's built around relationships. It's built around trust. And so the more trust that we have in relationships, because where there's trust, everything moves fast. You know, when you don't have trust, everything moves slow. And so when you have that trust, and Tom, you going to Texas Baptist, you know, God ordained that. That was God's plan. You're already a great friend. You're in Tarrant. You're one of our pastors. You're one of us. Even though I had great relationships anyway, just you being there even opens up more doors of relationships. And you know, I see us being able to partner, and a lot of Tarrant Baptist pastors and others going across the state of Texas, maybe taking refocus into all different areas of the state, because you've got a lot of pastors that are from smaller areas and they feel isolated. And, you know, we don't want anyone to feel isolated. We want them to know they've got brothers and sisters coming along with them, praying for them, encouraging them, so that we all are boldly sharing Christ. And sometimes we feel like we're all alone. So I'd love to see us spread all across Texas and really take refocus groups everywhere. I'd love, we're already starting to partner, of course, in Detroit. Texas Baptist, you did the vision tour, I believe it was last September. So got great connections. Mike Durbin at Michigan Baptist Convention, he and I have kept corresponding even this morning. So we're trying to set up a retreat for the spring of 2021. We're hoping COVID is better. We're in Peru, you know, working in Peru. We're going to be going to Wales, working with pastors there. It's just whoever God entrusts, but you know, I'd love to have our pastors go and pour into other pastors, and then their churches go and pour into those churches and develop these great relationships. You know, we're better together than apart, and we have a lot more strength together. And there's too many people who don't know Christ, and we have the solution. We have the answer, right? As Texas Baptist, we have the answer for all of our problems, all of our woes, is if we work together. So that's really what I'm hoping for.
Right. Together, better together, absolutely a way of saying it. And that leads me to, you know, think about what we as all of our churches, all those in the audience, whether you're on staff at a church, the pastor, whether you work for an association, whether you're part of one of the other missional partners groups that we are meeting with, our universities, our seminaries, we want you to be part of our partnership. We want to be part of your partnership. We always work together, and always, when we do, it works better. And so we want to let you know there's a place for you to serve, wherever it might be in Texas, whether you're in one of our big cities or if you're in one of the smaller towns. I'm from a small town in deep East Texas. We were so far East Texas, we fell over and we were in Louisiana and Arkansas. Some of y'all know where Atlanta, Texas is, between Texarkana and Shreveport, Louisiana. That's my hometown. And so even places like my little town that I came from, we want to be in partnership with one another. I'm doing a personal study on Acts right now, and as I think about the book of Acts, I see where Paul went on his missionary journeys, picked picked up people, some people left, and he got the opportunity to work with different churches, different groups as he went, and that's really what we're doing here. And so instead of Iconium and Cyprus and Thessalonica, today it's cities like Fort Worth and Portland and Seattle and Dallas and Houston and all the other areas that is represented in those. And so we want to come and be in partnership together. Come join us. We will take some questions. We're interested in what you guys have to say and what questions you might have for us and how we can join together. Moving where we are now, I feel like it's a good place, even with everything else going on, but how we can make it even better with your help. Come join us.
That was some great information. I'm pleased to be joined by Tom Howe, who's the Associate Director of the Missions Team and Director of our Church Starting for Texas Baptist, along with Becky Beiser. She's the Director of Leadership Development for Tarrant Baptist Association, and Randy Adams, Executive Director Treasurer from the Northwest Baptist Convention. Welcome, Tom, Becky, and Randy. As a reminder to our attendees, you are welcome to type your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we will try to answer as many of those questions as time allows. And the questions will only be seen by the host, so feel free to do those now. Wow, that was a lot of information. I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of the things that everybody does. A couple questions that come that we have is, we talked a lot about pastors going to retreats and pastors coming to the Northwest. How does a church just connect? Do they need to do that, Tom, through the Texas Partnership? Do they reach out straight to Northwest or to Tarrant? How do they go through that process? What's the best way to make that happen?
Of course, there's several different ways they can do that. I think one of the easiest way is for us to kind of become a clearinghouse for a lot of that work. But certainly churches go directly to different ministries and agencies and state conventions and that sort of thing. We try to make it as easy as possible. I would love to just talk to anybody. I love working with local associations. I'm a Baptist at heart. I believe in the local church as where we do everything. And then beyond that, we work with the local association, and then we come along and assist in both those as well. So really contacting me would be a good way of knowing where to go with some of our partnerships outside of the state. And also, we're trying our best to try to coordinate what we're doing so we're not duplicating some of the ministries and things also. We've had an opportunity that's developed just in the last 3 days of some joining some churches that each have Belize in their mind. We're going down to Belize and maybe working together. And so instead of them trying to separately, maybe as we became aware of this, maybe we can help them do that together. So there's some benefit in coordinating it. But yes, you could contact Randy, your local association for sure, especially if those projects are closer at heart. We will be resuming our vision trips and mission trips and activities when we can, as I said earlier. But and we will be hosting those trips. It's just a matter of figuring out when that's going to be. So I believe that somewhere along the way we're going to have my contact information up, and anybody and everybody is feel free to call me, email me, whatever you need to do.
So the vision trips, Tom, are those something that you work with the different areas like Randy's area or Becky's area and decide what is needed in those areas, and then as the churches connect? Or do you have the churches reach out and say, I'm interested in going to Washington State? What opportunities are there?
Right. The main way we do it, again, there's many ways of doing everything, but the main way that we do it is I will put a trip on the schedule. Let's say we're going to Portland, Oregon, and there's many other places. We did about 9 trips last year to different places. Randy was right. There was over 70 churches that went. I think it was 71 or 2 pastors or lay leaders or missions pastor that went to the Northwest, 71 or 72, 73, somewhere there. And so we'll give plenty of heads up of when that trip is going to be. It's going primarily for a couple of either doing collegiate work or to go church starting as the lion's share of it, or training or things of that nature. We will tell ahead of time kind of the purpose of that trip. And then if people are interested, they'll let me know. We'll coordinate all the travel, so they don't have to do that part of thing. We'll even assist churches, especially first-time churches. We'll assist them in some of that cost. Now, we won't take the whole church up there, but we'll take a key leader up there to go. Whether that's, we've got other partnerships developing that might be some other places. I'm hesitant to say where they are, but there are other parts of the country. And then as far as local work, of course, most people know their county or their hometowns fairly well, but we still would love to help in any ways we can in those areas as well.
So, Randy, you spoke a lot about the relationships and the vision teams. And so talk a little bit to us about how those turn into long-term relationships and how we can be a part of that.
Sure. You know, people connect at the heart level when they connect long-term, typically. So often, first there has to be an introduction, and the way that seems to have worked best are these vision teams. So the Texas Baptist leaders connecting with our leaders, setting up a vision tour in a certain area of the convention. When they do that, say Seattle, Portland, Eugene, wherever it might be, they're going to meet local church planters, local pastors and leaders, and they're going to, you know, have dinner with them, and they're going to ride in the car with them, and they're going to have formal presentations, and friendships develop from that, and a heart for the work develops from that. And what we see is that, you know, you just connect with certain people. And we do have a variety. So we'll want to have in those vision teams, you know, our Hispanic pastors and church planters, our Vietnamese, our English speaking, a variety of, and then different styles of worship and all of those types of things, or even evangelistic approaches. And so it largely depends on that heart connection that develops between the Texas pastor or leader and our pastors and leaders. But there has to be that beginning, that first connection. And then from that, something more can develop.
So share with us an ideal vision trip.
Tom might know better than me. What I would say is an ideal vision trip is going to introduce the people coming to the culture in some way, to what God's already doing, to the need. So you're gonna see the need. You're gonna see what is God doing, where can we connect, and how can we connect. You're going to get some sense of the culture and how it might be different. Learn a little bit maybe about the missiology, our approach to reaching people in the Northwest. I'll give you an example of an experience I had, a very brief example, but we used to have a partnership in Africa when I was a pastor. And I learned that this particular people that we were focused on were terrified of curses. I mean, the idea of a curse, an uncle placing a curse on you or something like that. So I chose a text from Galatians 3 about Christ redeeming us from the curse, that all of us are under a curse through our sin, but Jesus gave his life to rescue us from that curse. It was a powerful message that related directly to where those people were. Different, even in the Northwest, even the United States, people coming from different backgrounds, an Islamic background, maybe just a particular background in their family situation or whatever. They have different ways that the gospel best connects with them. And even beginning with a vision trip, people can start learning those things. I say that the people who do best are people with a missionary heart. If a person, for example, if a church planter comes from Texas to plant a church in the Northwest, if he intends to plant a Texas church or do things like he always did somewhere in Texas, that's not going to work. You've got to approach it with a missionary calling and mindset in terms of discovering, you know, the place where you are and the people where you are, and adjusting approaches in some sense to that people, that place, that situation.
I think that's a great word to know that, and that's why the partnership probably work as well as they do, because wherever we're going to plant a church is you're going to know more than we are in coming. So I think that's a great word. Tom, did you want to add anything to that?
I would. So what we do is we look to not make them super long. It's not a vacation. It's, it's just, we really hit the ground running. We investigate as many sites as we can. We try to keep the groups no bigger than about 15 or 16. I had one 32, and we won't do that again. It was a lot of people to manage. But we've had them as small as 4 or 5. But usually about 12. It's kind of ends up being the sweet spot. But we look at multiple ministry sites. There's a little bit of travel sometimes. We try to keep it as concise as we can. But we look at their ministry sites. We look at what they're doing innovatively. Here's what I think the biggest takeaway is: our partnerships, whether it's in our associations or other state conventions, they're not one-way streets. They are absolutely reciprocal. We always get something out of it. And everybody I've taken, I don't think there's any exceptions out of all the pastors we've taken in the Northwest. They've all of them have said, we can do this in our church back home. And it's because what the Northwest in particular is dealing with, that's the culture that our children and grandchildren are now. This isn't something coming to us. It's already in our towns. And so when we think about Texas and Washington State being in completely different worlds and different circles, that reflects sometimes why our churches might be divided by age. So there's a lot that we can learn back and forth. But the technical part, we go for about 4 days. We'll see some ministry sites. We debrief. We talk about it. See how we can help them if that's possible. And a lot of times, maybe not even the pastor or the missions director that went is the only one. He may have a circle of people back in his association, back with his networks that also can be connected.
So Becky, usually when we think about mission trips, we always think about going somewhere else. But you talked a lot about just what happens there in your local association. And so help us understand a little bit more how we can partner with not necessarily just Tarrant, but if I'm, say, down in the Valley, an association down there, what's some good ways that we can connect that way?
So Texas Baptist connecting down in the Valley, is that what you're asking, Colleen?
Not specifically down in the Valley, but just our associations, because we typically think about going to another state or another country. We don't typically think about our neighbor right there, that maybe the association that we're in.
Oh, you're so right. And one of the things in Tarrant Association, we'll have people come from other associations doing work within Tarrant, working with our partner churches. Even churches like from the Valley coming and working with our Hispanic churches and helping them with revivals, helping them with evangelistic campaigns, going door to door. So we have folks coming into Tarrant, working especially like even with Mission Arlington, working in a lot of different sites, which really strengthens what we can do in Tarrant. And then we love to partner even with sister associations next door. We partner with Southwest Metroplex. We might partner with Harvest Association or Parker Association. So we try to do things together. Even Dallas Association, we love to combine, do training together, do different projects because we feel like there's more strength. We've done things down in the Valley too with pastors. We have several pastors who are in Tarrant who are in the Valley. I'm thinking of Dr. Julio Quineri, who's one of my friends. And so just going down to McAllen and doing things because it's basically relationships. And I think we've talked about that. Relationships actually kind of clear the playing field where we can go and do things together.
Well, I also wanted to touch on a little bit, I believe Randy spoke about the different language groups, and Texas is well known for, I believe we have 93 different language groups. And so those mission fields, not just in the Northwest, but even here in Texas. And so I'd ask Becky and Randy if you both will just kind of address the different language groups and how we can best connect with those, because that's even a different element in trying to do these partnerships. So Becky, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I mean, we've even partnered with Dallas Association and others when we're trying to start new groups in Tarrant. I know even years ago when we were trying to start a deaf church, we went to Dallas. They already had one going, got some help on how we could actually get them started in Tarrant. That's not the only Arabic. We were trying to start Arabic churches. So kind of going where it's already been done? How did you get it going? What did you do? How did you find the pastor? Was it better starting within another church to kind of get it stabilized? But just learning. And as we get a lot of different refugees, I was actually talking with someone from the Newcomers Academy this morning, which is where all the refugees start to school, those that are in middle school and high school, and for the first year, so they can understand the culture, but just all the different language groups that are here, and being sure that we have a church in their heart language so that they can actually come to Christ. So that's a big issue that we deal with all the time.
Yeah, in the
Andy?
Northwest, we have new immigrants, and then we have those who've been here a long time, and they've come in different ways. So, for example, our Koreans, our second largest language group in our churches is Korean. Spanish is probably the fastest growing. Spanish would quickly overtake Koreans if we just had enough pastors. That's the deal with Spanish. We could start Spanish churches fairly easily if we have the leadership. But we have 41 Korean language. They've been here for quite some time, a lot of the Korean folks. Same way with Russian. Russian is a fairly large people group for us. Pretty easy to start churches among Russian peoples. A lot of Christians, they're often larger churches. A lot of our Russian churches. Our largest church up until recently was a Korean church. And some of our largest churches are Russian language churches. Then we have the immigrants coming from places like Burma. We have 3 different Burmese language groups in the Northwest. They tend to be poor. A lot of the Vietnamese immigrants tend to be poor, and the Chinese are not, the Koreans are not. So, the needs are different with the different groups. Some come having English skills already, some come without English skills. One thing I would say is it's more difficult to find partners for our language church planters than it is for English. Guys, a Texas cowboy guy, he can come up here and connect with a Anglo guy who he can relate to and talk sports with or whatever it might be, much more easily than he can a person who struggles with English. That's our biggest challenge and that's one reason I say if you have language churches in Texas that you want to engage in missions, that would be awesome to get them connected with the same language here in the Northwest, because what we've discovered is a lot of our Anglo churches, that's not really what they're looking to do. There are exceptions, but.
Let me add to that also. Of course, you just here in Texas, if you look across the Metroplex in San Antonio and Austin and Houston, we've got so many different languages as well. In fact, Houston is now the second most diverse school district in the country of the second most number of languages behind New York. Houston passed Los Angeles a couple of years ago. But not same issues you're going to deal with in the Northwest and in Denton and wherever else. And so as you reach those folks, sometimes we gather to ourselves a lot. And I've seen what Randy just said, when we'll go and do mission trips or vision trips to the Northwest, a lot of times the Anglo pastors will kind of gravitate toward the Anglo ministries. And we need to be certain that we don't always remind them, hey, if you want to do that, that's great. But what about a Congolese church? What about helping a Vietnamese church or Mongolian or something like that? And I think we need to remember that here too. If we're not careful, we will keep to ourselves even in our own neighborhoods. And God has brought the world to us, and it's an opportunity to do missions here, whether it's in the state, in our cities, in our country, or even beyond our country internationally.
Can I make a suggestion on that? One time when I was in Oklahoma, I took my team, I led evangelism and missions for Oklahoma Baptist for a number of years. And we traveled one street in Oklahoma City from east to west and just saw how the city changed along that one street. We started in the African American area, then we came to the capital area, and then we went into an Asian part of the town, more Chinese and Vietnamese, same street. And as we traveled further west, we encountered different people groups. And my team, many of whom had lived there for a number of years, had said they'd never seen the city that way. They never really thought about it in that way. You could do that in Houston. You could do that in almost any town. And people would learn something about their city, just even traveling perhaps one street. Have to be the right street, but you would see how the city becomes different, or different language groups and all that as you travel along. So people, I mean, it's amazing how many people in their own town don't know their own town. Now, Houston's awfully big, and so you can't hardly know Houston, but some towns even smaller, people know their neighborhood maybe. They don't know another neighborhood, and they know their language or ethnic group. They don't know another one. And so
That's a great word. And, we think about languages, about going overseas. And so one of the questions we have, it says, with the new difficulty related to travel restrictions and looking at other countries, how does partnerships with overseas ministries, what does that look like, Tom?
Well, we've got some answers for that for sure. A couple in particular. One of them is none of us knew how to do Zoom hardly 8 months ago. And now we're all IT experts, right? Well, maybe not that quite yet, but we've all had to learn. Well, let's open up some avenues. I'm an interim pastor of a church west of Fort Worth right now. And I was looking at the people who watch. 88% of the people that watch my sermons are from the United States. That means 12% are international. We've had one person that's watched it from another country, I won't mention the country, 5 consecutive weeks. So they've never communicated with me. Obviously we think maybe they understand English and my Southern drawl on top of that. But we have, number one, we have communication ability we've never had before, whether that's through media, through email, or whatever else. That door certainly is open, and we can look about how being the church outside of even our country that way. The second avenue, though, is I'll get kind of back to, this is not necessarily my role, but we have something called MAP at the Texas Baptist Missionary Adoption Program. I think we've already highlighted it a few weeks back. But in that, you can adopt a missionary, and we're looking how to maybe even considering churches or pastors in this, where you can adopt an indigenous missionary in another country. Right now, we have partnerships in Peru and Brazil, Sierra Leone, India, Mexico, and other places as well, where for not that much money, we'll match half of what their local partnership can do. For example, in Sierra Leone, it's $50. We will provide $50 if local ministries will provide $50. That $100 will support a pastor. $100 a month will support a pastor in Sierra Leone. So that's a way a church can make an impact internationally. Until travel restrictions are lifted, we obviously are really not able to go to the different places, but we can keep up, we can communicate, we can give, we can find out what they're doing and be a part of it that way.
That's good information. Yes, MAP was a couple weeks ago. Well, our time is closing. We're getting close to the end here. So just as a final word, if Becky would like to give a couple words, and Randy, and then Tom, if you'll wrap us up, and then after you finish, I just have a little more housekeeping.
Yes, I mean, partnerships to us are just amazing, and really getting to see our brothers and sisters in different parts, even of our state or different parts of the country, and knowing that God is working everywhere. It's really encouraging. It encourages our pastors to really get to know other pastors and to see God at work there. And it's like, wow, we start connecting the dots and see how powerful God is. And it encourages us and it spurs us on to really be faithful and to walk in strength and walk in power. So I really just want to thank Tom, you, Colleen, Texas Baptist, for even introducing us into new partnerships, places that we as Tarrant Baptist have gone. We wouldn't have gone to Venezuela without that introduction. Even in Vancouver, and then what we're about to do with Michigan. It was because of the vision tour Tom had me go on, and we connected, and we actually already have something set for next spring where we're going to be going for 3 days. So thank you.
When I was a pastor, my whole life was changed when I went to Pakistan. And our church wound up adopting an unreached people group in Pakistan. And that really set us on the path of mission involvement and engagement. God called missionaries from our church. Our church for 2 years was the 4th largest giving church in the Southern Baptist Convention in Lottie Moon giving. We were a really strong cooperative program. We were not a mega church. We were larger, but we were not a mega church. But God spoke to people's hearts and just transformed the thinking of the people. Partnership missions, to me, it does a great deal for those of us who receive. It does more for those of us who go. I believe that. It's done more for me, the churches I pastored. In state convention work, that's one reason when I came here, the Northwest had never had a sending partnership. They'd always received. And I was much more interested in going than receiving, honestly. And so we established a partnership in East Asia. And we have had dozens and dozens of churches, hundreds of people involved in East Asia. It's been incredible. It's really helped transform our churches. The other side of that is, though, we have an opportunity to pour back into a lot of our Texas churches and to receive from our Texas churches what they can do for us. And so I agree with Tom. Partnerships are reciprocal in what you gain from them, but really the giver gains more than the receiver. And it's biblical to say that. It's experiential from my perspective. And we invite Texans to come here. By the way, we have dozens and probably hundreds of natural lakes in the Northwest. Natural lakes, not just reservoirs. The rivers, the Columbia River, the second largest river in the country, is just south of where I'm sitting. I mean, it is beautiful. And there's lots of great reasons to come to the Northwest and spend some time with us. And I think you'll enjoy it and benefit from it when you do. So thank you all.
I would say this kind of in wrap up from my point of view. First of all, I'm gonna give you some contact information for me. So I'll do that kind of at the end of what I'm gonna say. So if you want to grab a pencil and pen so you can scribble that down real quick, I'll give you a moment to grab that. So one way obviously is to go do missions, hands-on missions, and we're prohibited from that. I think that's allowing us to be creative though. I think this has given us the opportunity to figure out what else we can do. And then when we can go, we can just enhance what we're doing at that point. None of our churches should be quitting or giving up now. This is our time to press forward in what God's called us to do and to be as the church, whether that's locally. I really think we need to be connecting to our communities right now more than ever. Our churches need to be involved in our communities. It's hard to do. I know that. Sometimes we got to be creative. Our communities are hurting more than they ever have before. We've had some hurting communities before all of this happened. So we need to figure out how to do that locally. But we also can be informed of what's going on outside of ourselves, certainly by financially supporting folks. I don't mean just sending a check. Nobody's going to turn down a check, but I'm going to tell you, I've talked to pastors all over the country, all over the state, they're lonely. It's challenged. They're frustrated. They're not sure about tomorrow. And if a Sunday school class, I want everybody here to imagine your cell group, if you call it Sunday school or home group, or whatever you call it, if y'all would adopt a planter in the Northwest, for example, remind you, your pastor already has the challenges he has, but he has another pastor within 5 miles of his house. I guarantee you in Texas, we have that. Maybe West Texas a little further, but we have them all over the place. Up there may be a pastor that's the only pastor for 60 miles, the only one. Nobody can go have breakfast with or coffee with on a regular basis. If a Sunday school class could adopt a church, adopt a pastor and his wife, and just send them cards or emails, that's all. You will encourage and give hope to some people who sometimes feel like they're alone and forgotten. So there's things we can do besides a lot of money. Money always helps. Going always helps. Encouraging and praying for always helps. And then if you're just lost and not sure what to do, contact me. I can find out what you're interested in. We can get you connected all over Texas. If it's just I want to stay in the Lone Star State, that's fine. We can do that. We can explore other opportunities. So I'm gonna give you my cell phone number first. I'll give it to you 2 times. And then I'll give you my email, and everybody here is welcome to email me, text me, call me. I would say this, if you text me, at least tell me who you are, because a lot of times I get texts that start like this. Hey, that thing you were talking about the other day, could you expound on that? And I don't know what thing and what day they're talking about. So at least just say, hey, this is John from Sensaba and whatever. So
hey, Tom, can
yes.
I say one quick thing?
Sure.
You mentioned wives. Thank you for that. I'll tell you, we just had, I could give you some specific situations in the last 2 weeks. 2 church planters who quit, one whose wife is no longer here. Their marriage is intact, but she said, I just can't do this any longer. I need a break. And I mean, really, really tough stuff. So we get pastors coming, but if a pastor could bring his wife or bring some women to connect to our women and our wives, that is a huge deal. The guy can't stay if his wife isn't doing well. So thank you for that.
So if you as an individual, you as a church, as a lay leader, as a staff member, as an associational worker, if you want to contact me or call me, my telephone number is 817, that's the Fort Worth number, 817-201-8255. 2653. Those last 4 digits spells Coke, C-O-K-E. So again, that's 817-201-2653. And my email address is really simple. It's just 7 letters with a dot in the middle of it all. My name is just, you see it on the screen, Tom How, like how you doing? My Spanish folks call me Tom Como. If you know Spanish, you know what that means. But it's just TOM.HOWE at txb.org. T for Texas, X like X-ray, B like boy, txb.org. TOM.HOWE at txb.org. I'd love to hear from you by text or by phone, by email, whatever, and say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing wherever, or how can we do that where we are? How can we do that in El Paso? How can we do that in San Angelo or wherever else?
That's a great word. Thank you. Thank you for reminding us that no matter who we are, we don't have to be a pastor. We can be whoever we are, and we can make an impact, even as simple as writing a card. So Tom, Becky, Randy, thank you so much for this great workshop. Lots of great information. Thank you for helping us understand how partnership missions work and how we can be involved. And so we want to really appreciate all your time and everything. So, and how it's touched so many lives and how we can continue to touch lives. Just as a reminder, if you to tune in each Tuesday at 2 p.m. Leading up to annual meeting, and we'll premiere a new workshop. The final workshop will happen on Tuesday, November 17th. As a reminder to our participants, this workshop was recorded and it can be viewed on demand. And if you'll go to txb.org/AM, this workshop should be loaded up by the end of the week, if not early next week. This workshop, as well as all of the workshops that have preceded, will also be there. So you can get this workshop and those others. Thank you again so much for everyone that's joined us. There's a lot more to be learned, but we appreciate your time and look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great day. Thank you.